Throughout Link's many adventures across Hyrule, he must utilize a wide selection of unique items to help him solve the world's many trials. From grappling hooks, boomerangs, and even the self-propelled Bombachus, the Zelda games have always contained some of the most unique items that keeps these games fresh and exciting throughout every adventure. For this video, I've put together my top 10 personal favorite items within the series, and it's going to be great to finally share them all with you. Keep in mind that this list will only be containing items from all 3D Zelda games except Breath of the Wild, as this game's definition of items is vastly different and quite uncomparable to the ones in earlier games. So sorry Stasis Rune, you won't be getting the spotlight in this one. Anyways, with that said, here are my top 10 Legend of Zelda items. I hope you all enjoy. This number 10 item might be one of the most cumbersome in the entire series, but nothing meets the wrecking havoc that is the ball and chain. This massive weapon can be spun around in a circle to create a menacing kill zone bound to shatter apart any ice-based enemy or barrier that stands in his way. Before Link can obtain this item, he must first kill the mini-boss who uses it, so I thought it was really cool to see this item utilized even before Link can get his hands on it. Wielding such a daunting weapon like this really makes Link feel like a badass, and I'm really glad that this item gets utilized for some really great combat encounters later in this dungeon. However, the only big problem I have with this item is how it sees little to no use after completing the dungeon it's obtained in, which is a common theme for a lot of the items in Twilight Princess, I seem to remember. Regardless though, the sheer wrecking power and menacing presence of this short-lived item makes it still worthy for the number 10 spot. One of the most fun things to do in The Wind Waker is to take control of seagulls and fly around the various islands of the Great Sea, and this is all possible thanks to the Hyoe pair. Just stick one of these on top of your head and you'll be controlling one in no time, because apparently, seagulls are attracted to pairs in the Zelda universe. Quite an interesting dietary choice, but I digress. Flying around an island as a seagull is actually quite fun, and it allows the player to scout out hidden points of interest and secrets that will be hard to find while restricted to the ground. However, your small size does make you quite vulnerable to enemy attacks, so make sure to clear the skies before you take flight, unless you want a huge group of birds to devour you. Overall, the sheer freedom of flying around the Great Sea as a seagull definitely made this item stand out. The next item on this list also contains the similar possessive properties of the Hyoe pair, but this time, instead of controlling seagulls, you'll be controlling giant, menacing statues with the Domain Rod. Obtained within the Temple of Time, this item can be used to manipulate the various statues across the dungeon by opening shortcuts, weighing down switches, and even to attack the final boss, so it's safe to say that this item is the main reason why this dungeon was so memorable. Unlike the ball and chain, this item actually does not get thrown out immediately after completing the dungeon, and actually sees some clever use in the next segment of the game, and then it never gets used again. Thanks, Twilight Princess. But for the time that this item is useful though, I had a lot of fun using it, and that's why it deserves the number 8 spot. Zelda games can be filled with some really funny and memorable moments, and thanks to the Picto Box from Wind Waker, these moments can be captured and saved at any time you like. I always love taking dumb but funny screenshots with this while playing, and this item was made even better with the HD edition of this game, with the added selfie mode and changeable facial expressions that gave a lot more personality to the shots. Although Majora's Mask had its own version of the Picto Box, this item was kinda useless in comparison, as pictures taken would just get scrapped at the end of the 3-day cycle, which kinda defeats the purpose. Thankfully though, Breath of the Wild brought the camera back into the series in a really great way, but I would still love to see the camera item added into the other 3D Zelda games as well, assuming that they ever get re-released or remastered for the Switch. I mean, if they can add new items like the pole lantern and Swift Sail into the remakes, how hard would it be to implement a camera as well? Overall though, this item made some of Wind Waker's memorable moments last so much longer. In most of the 3D Zelda games, musical instruments have always been very important in Link's arsenal items, as you'll frequently learn and play songs to progress in his adventure. Although I love Skyward Sword's Goddess Harp and Wind Waker's Wind Waker, by far my favorite instrument in the entire series is, you guessed it, the Ocarina of Time. Using this instrument to play multiple different songs was a lot of fun, and most of these tunes still hold up as the most iconic ones in the entire series. However, although I appreciate this item in its original game, I always preferred it better in Majora's Mask, as the ocarina would shapeshift to accommodate Link's current form, from human, to Deku, to Goron, to finally, Zora. Being able to play all these different instruments was a lot of fun, and I love how this feature was embraced within a neat little side quest, where Link forms a band using all 4 of his forms, and the end result is amazing. Because of this, I think it's safe to say that Majora's Mask version of this item is the best instrument in the entire series. Alright, we have finally reached the top 5 items on this list, and what better way to kick it off than with the spinner from Twilight Princess. This glorified top allows Link to swiftly travel across the rail trains in the Arbiter's Grounds dungeon, and I gotta say, this just feels epic. Using this item offered a much faster and therefore unique gameplay experience, as the player will often find themselves jumping between different tracks to avoid spikes and other obstacles at high speeds. This item is also the reason why this dungeon's boss fight was one of the best in the entire series, as it makes you feel as if you were playing one epic game of undead pinball. Unlike the other items from this game, the spinner manages to hold its relevance throughout other places beyond this dungeon, like the Temple of Time and Hyrule Castle, but it's still safe to say that most of its iconic uses are strictly derived from the dungeon it's obtained in. Regardless though, when this item is in its prime, it makes for some of the most fun moments in the entire series. Okay, I'm sure you're sick of seeing Twilight Princess on your screen at this point, but I just really love the items from this game, even if they are somewhat short-lived. Fortunately, this next item on this list shed this stereotype completely, by offering many fresh and exciting uses throughout the entire game, and that would be the Gale Boomerang. This multi-purpose item is a great twist on the standard boomerang we see in other games, as its unique tornado-like properties can be used for many different things, like putting out fires, sucking up items and bombs, and even spinning special wind switches found within the game. On top of all of this, this item still contains all the traits of classic boomerangs, such as cutting vines and stunning enemies, so these added benefits really make this item stand out as the ultimate multi-tool in the series. Even though this item is obtained in the very first dungeon, it still manages to see very clever use throughout the entire game, lasting all the way up until the final dungeon. Wow, Twilight Princess finally changing it up for once. Props to you. For these reasons, the Gale Boomerang is easily deserving of the number 4 spot. The most prominent attribute about the Wind Waker is the ability to control the winds, and what better way to take advantage of this than with the Deku Leaf. This makeshift paraglider allows Link to soar across the sky, and assuming the wind direction is in his favor, can cover huge distances without losing much elevation at all. Whether you're trying to fly between distant peaks, or just breezing down outside island in style, the free and unrestricted feeling that this item grants is definitely its biggest strength. If you haven't noticed already, this item is very similar to the paraglider from Breath of the Wild, so I think it's safe to say that Nintendo was definitely taking notes on this one. However, there is one unique quality about the Deku Leaf that separates itself completely from the paraglider, and that is its ability to create huge wind gusts with the swing of a leaf. This ability is very much secondary to the standard flight one, but it actually does see some very clever uses in places like Forest Haven, where platforms on tracks can be moved by blowing air in the opposite direction. So maybe not as cool as soaring through the skies, but still a welcome ability nonetheless. Overall, the free and unrestricted feeling that this item grants you made it by far the best item in the Wind Waker, but not yet the best in the series. For the number 2 item on this list, we'll be giving the reins to Skyward Sword, a game we have not yet discussed in this ranking so far, for quite obvious reasons. For one, Skyward Sword had the least variety of items out of all the other games, and 2, these items were just so mediocre. I mean, come on, a dust cannon? Seriously, Nintendo? But, despite this, there does happen to be one new item in this game that completely breaks these standards, and is easily the most creative one yet. And yes, I am talking about the Beetle. This player-controlled drone can be deployed at just about any time to not only explore the player's surroundings, but also to obtain collectibles, activate switches, cut special ropes, and so much more. So I guess you can say that it's a really neat mixture between the Highway Pair and the Gale Boomerang that I mentioned earlier. And considering how much I love these items, I think you can see why I put this item where it stands. There are just so many fun uses and adaptations for this item, and it gets even better when the hook attachment gets added later on, that allows you to pick up and carry bombs that can be dropped on unsuspecting prey. Pretty neat stuff. Because of all these wacky, cool uses throughout the entire game, the Beetle is easily one of my favorite items in the entire series, but it still can't nearly touch number 1 spot. Alright guys, I know you've been waiting a long time for this one, but to your surprise, the number 1 item on this list is not going to be the hookshot. Yup, a little controversial, but I went there. And this item is not going to be the claw shot either, but rather, the number 1 best item on this list is the double claw shot. I mean, come on, did you seriously expect me to make Zelda item ranking and not include this as number 1? I mean, the claw shot in itself is already an amazing item, allowing Link to grapple himself or other things across large spaces. But as soon as the second one was added into the mix, Link can fluidly grapple back and forth between walls and ceilings to traverse dungeons and canyonous spaces, and I gotta say, there is just no better feeling. This item only appears in 2 3D Zelda games to date, and acts as a late game reward, which makes obtaining these items feel even more rewarding, as he built upon previously established ideas when Link only obtained his first claw shot earlier on in his adventure. This is why I love places like City in the Sky so much, as the whole dungeon was revolved around grappling your way across various corridors and eventually getting to fight a giant dragon boss using nothing but your double claw shots to move around the arena. So it's safe to say that this item had some of the wildest yet amazing integration. Overall, this epic item is sure to go down as the most fun and revered item in the entire series. Anyways, that is the end of this ranking. I had a lot of fun making this one, and I really hope you guys enjoyed watching it. If so, please be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already for more great Zelda content. Also, thank you very much to my amazing Patreon supporters who help me out here. If you want your name featured at the end of all my future videos, please consider supporting for as little as $1 a month. Link below in the description. Anyways, thanks again everybody for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.